Shalom and welcome back to the channel. I've been meaning to make a video about the election, but there's so many things have been taking place personally, so I really haven't had time to get to it. But I just wanted to give my thoughts on the 2024 election that just took place and how this relates to biblical events that are happening now and moving forward. Some time back, I had been saying that there was no way that I could see Donald Trump being allowed to be president again of the United States. And the reason I said wouldn't be allowed is because, and I think we can all agree upon this, that the 2020 elections was not a legitimate election by any stretch of the imagination. I believe Joe Biden had 81 million votes, more than any other president in the history of presidential elections, and I still can't believe that actually happened. Most people believe and understand that was a rigged election. Before I continue on, I just want to make it clear that this channel is by no means a political channel. I really don't speak about politics much on this channel, although I do believe that politics does play a big role in biblical matters, but primarily, this channel is built around biblical teachings, biblical doctrines, and so on and so forth. But I thought that it was important to make this video in light of the situation and possibly the things that are coming ahead. Donald Trump was not going to be allowed to become president of the United States here in 2024. Now, why do I say that? One of the biggest reasons I say that, and as I mentioned earlier, I believe most people will agree with this, our election in 2020 was rigged. There's no way that Joe Biden would have gotten 81 million votes, the most in presidential history, and beat Donald Trump. Having said that, if we believe that was rigged, then why would we believe that the 2024 election was not rigged? That somehow it was too big to rig, that the people just came out in droves to elect Donald Trump and our voices were finally heard and we elected our president. Now, let me make sure that I am absolutely 100% clear, because I believe there's a lot of misconstrued information about this. Do I believe that the people that went out to vote, that their votes were counted? I believe, and I have it here, Donald Trump, this election got 75 million votes. Yes, I do. I believe that the right that we have as Americans to vote is a right. A lot of our people in America have died for that right. A lot of countries, third world nations out there, other nations that don't have elections. So I do believe that's something that we should cherish. But those times of us having a free and fair election are long and far behind us. But the action of actually going out to vote, I could totally understand that, and I respect that. And I believe the 75 million people that went out to vote voted for Trump were legitimate. But that doesn't mean that the election was not rigged, though. It doesn't mean that there was not manipulation, or maybe lack of manipulation. Because as my thoughts have been before, if in fact we did have free and fair elections, 100% Donald Trump would have won, as we just saw in a landslide. So that just goes to prove my theory that if we did have free and fair elections and everybody's vote was actually counted, we would have a landslide, which we had in this 2024 election cycle, in favor of Donald Trump. But again, that does not mean that it was not rigged, in the sense that he was allowed to become president in the same way he was allowed to become president in 2016. Now, what I had said is that I couldn't see him in this presidential cycle to be allowed to be president in 2024. Obviously, there's other things that the world government or the world leaders or the elite, however you want to define them, have in store. If we can go back to 2016, as I mentioned earlier, Donald Trump had won that presidential election. But what happened in 2016? I don't need to tell you what happened in 2016. There was a huge pandemic. I call it a pandemic because I do believe that was planned. There was a video that took place, and it came out in 2019. And if some of you out there know the name of that video, please put it in the comments down below. But I believe it came out somewhere mid 2019 or October 2019, somewhere around there. And it was a video of leaders from all around the world and CEOs, leaders of companies, and they went over scenarios and they role played about some mysterious virus that was going around that would kill millions of people all around the world. And they were role playing and putting up scenarios on how they would react to this event, and how the nations and these leaders of these governments would govern their countries and their nations based on all the events that were taking place and all the deaths that were taking place around the world. Same thing with the CEOs of these companies. So they had this thing going where they were getting ready for it. Well, fast forward approximately about a year later, what do we have? We have COVID-19. Lo and behold, this mysterious virus that they planned for mysteriously hit the world. And in fact, millions and millions of people died due to this virus. And we were led to believe that it was not, in fact, from a lab leak. It was a gain of function, and it just mutated. But there's a lot of evidence to show that it actually was a lab leak that came from the Wuhan lab. So who was president during this time? It was Donald Trump. Donald Trump was allowed to be president in 2016 for a very specific reason, which was the COVID-19. The economy, the deaths that took place around the world could be blamed on him. Fast forward to the 2020 election, Joe Biden was allowed to come back in. The people's votes were suppressed. In that, people did come out to vote. And I'm going to go over some of the statistics here. They did come out to vote for Donald Trump, but somehow Joe Biden had the most votes of any presidential candidate in the history of the United States. And that just boggles the mind. I can't see 81 million people coming out to vote on a landslide against Donald Trump. But what happened during the presidential election of 2020 and the years after that? Well, I can tell you this, that if Donald Trump had been president, there would not have been any wars that would have escalated as we saw in his first term as president in the 2016 election. But after Joe Biden was elected, what did we have? Well, we had the Russia and Ukraine war. And as far as believers, the more important one would be the Middle East war, the conflict that involves Israel. And currently right now with Iran and the proxies all around the nation, all around the Middle East that have been coming against Israel. So that took place, that was allowed to happen during the Joe Biden presidency, which in fact, it would not have happened during Donald Trump. So there was no way that Donald Trump would be allowed to become president because these wars had to take place. And a lot of this is leaning towards biblical matters. And that's why I wanted to talk about it in this channel. So then now we fast forward to 2024 and Donald Trump wins. Now, mind you, in 2020, Donald Trump got 74,223,975 votes. So let's just round it to 74 million. In 2024, Donald Trump had 75,634,037 votes. So 75 million votes from the popular election this past 2024 versus 74 million in 2020. That's a difference of 1 million votes. That to me does not signify a huge rash of people coming out and it being quote unquote too big to rig because everybody just came out and voted and their voices were heard. Now, as I stated earlier, that I do believe people actually did come out. I do believe that 75 million did come out and vote for Donald Trump. Almost the same exact amount that took place in 2020. It wasn't a huge amount of uptick in people that came out to vote for him from one election cycle to another. The difference was the rigged votes from 2020 to 2024. You take those out and all of a sudden you have Donald Trump winning. Hence what I had said earlier, that this 2024 election was rigged in that the votes were allowed to be counted. No manipulation happened with the votes. The powers that be allowed the people to speak. It's not that we overspoke them and we overtook their power, but rather that we were allowed to speak. The votes of the United States citizens were allowed to be counted, just as that happened in 2016. In, as I mentioned earlier, a worldwide event, tragic event took place in that election cycle between 2016 and 2020. So can we expect the same thing? Is that the reason why Donald Trump was allowed to take office here in 2024? I absolutely believe so. And the reason I say that is because if we have the premise that there's a greater entities out there, let's just call them world elites, that determine which way our elections go, then I find it extremely, extremely hard to believe that all of a sudden in 2024, we just overpowered them with our votes, with just 1 million more votes between the two different election cycles. We took away the power of the elites. I'm sorry, but I find that very, very hard to believe. I think there's too much power. There's too much money that's involved. I just can't see, with all the power and money that's involved and lives are at stake, I cannot see the world elites putting their entire future in our hands and allowing that to happen. I believe there's a bigger plan that they have in store for what's coming up in the next 4 years. And that's something that we have to brace for, because if we thought that the pandemic of 2020 was huge, this is going to probably be even bigger. And what I'm referring to specifically is the wars that are going on right now, specifically in the Middle East with Iran and Israel. And now you're seeing Russia tying together with North Korea and Turkey and China and coming together, and all these other nations that are coming against Israel, and as well as people in the United States. And you're seeing that even in the Christian community. You're seeing the Christian community that is being divided, split down the middle, that now it's United States first and not Israel. That's a dangerous place to be. I'll just tell you that right now, and I'll be honest with you. Forgetting Israel and just focusing on our own interest as far as the United States, that we don't want to be in that place, because the only reason that the United States is blessed is because we have blessed Israel, because we have Israel's back. But once our nation, our leaders, and the people of that nation start turning their back on Israel and stop supporting Israel and stop blessing Israel, then the blessings go away. And I fear that may be where we're going. I hope that I'm wrong. I really, really do. I hope that we are in for greener pastures, but I believe that we're in the end days. And Yeshua says in Matthew 24 that as far as when it takes place, when the tribulation happens, that the world's going to go through a great tribulation such as that has never been seen before, ever. And I don't think America is excluded from that. I mean, it's just pompous to believe that we think that we would be excluded from that. It doesn't say that the world has ever seen except the United States. No, it says that tribulation will come upon the world such as has never been seen ever, which that includes us. But what scenario would that include us? If we remove our blessing and our support for Israel, and I fear that may be something that we may happen. I say fear, and not so much that we're fearful, because we should not be fearful, because we know how the book ends. We know what happens, but fearful in the sense that we still have a lot of people that may not know the truth and that are waiting for things to happen, maybe believers, but are not aware of these things that are about to happen very soon. And so that's what I'm concerned about. So the other thing I wanted to discuss is, and I'm not going to get too much into this, but what elites are we talking about? Well, I would encourage you to do your own homework, because you have people such as Klaus Schwab, that is over the WEF, the World Economic Forum. You have people such as Larry Fink, who's with BlackRock. He's a financial investor, which are vastly influencing politics all around, not only our nation, but around the world, that have vested interests, financial interests. You have the George Soros of the world, even his son, which is now going to be taking over George's position. And you have, as I mentioned earlier, Klaus Schwab over the World Economic Forum, who has said that many of the leaders that we have around the world of the different nations are pretty much his disciples. So make no mistake, these leaders around the world are not only just looking out for their own nation. Yes, they are, but there is a global vision that we are not seeing, that the elites have in store. And if we lose sight of that, if we just believe that we are okay here in the United States, and this is by no means doom and gloom, this is just biblical, and we have to be responsible enough to talk about these things and not look at it as doom and gloom or as bad things, but rather things that must happen. And again, we must be responsible to talk about these things and be open to talk about these things without repercussions, but rather to come to the table to discuss these things openly in an open dialogue. And so anyways, I just wanted to make this video, give my thoughts. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Please leave me comments below. And please consider subscribing to this channel, liking it, sharing it, giving it a thumbs up. It really goes a long way in helping promote this channel and supporting me as well. So thank you, and we'll see you next time. Shalom.